After coaching 100 plus INFPs, I discovered 3 patterns that keep most of us INFPs stuck in life. And I've dedicated the last decade or so helping INFPs transform their personality traits into strengths rather than limitations. So everything that I'll share here comes from real journeys and breakthroughs from INFPs that I've personally coached. I've changed some of the details because it's important to keep that anonymity. And I'll include the practical strategies that have helped them finally break free from these cycles. And these aren't just casual observations, they're real struggles that show up repeatedly in my coaching sessions. And I'm willing to bet that you'll recognize yourself in at least one of these. The first pattern is actually the exact opposite of what most self-help advice tells you to do. In fact, following traditional advice for INFPs makes this pattern even worse. The first one is the isolation loop. Meet Alex, a legal videographer who turned his bedroom into both his office and his prison. Like many INFPs, he'd been battling depression for 20 years or so, stuck in what he called a loop of depression, dread-based anxiety, and analysis paralysis. This hits really close to home for many INFPs. We retreat into our rich inner world because it feels safer. It feels more comfortable. It's more reliable. The outside world can feel overwhelming, especially when we're dealing with depression or anxiety. But here's what makes the pattern so much more dangerous. It's that multiple studies have shown that social isolation creates a dangerous feedback loop with depression. Research highlights that loneliness not only triples the risk of developing depressive symptoms, but it also makes existing depression significantly worse over time. And for introverted, intuitive types like us who naturally spend more time in our inner world, this pattern can be especially challenging to break. So Alex's story is particularly powerful because he tried everything that conventional wisdom suggested. He pushed himself to network, he took medication, he tried to fake it until he made it, he even forced himself to attend industry events, but each attempt left him more drained and discouraged than before. The real problem wasn't his introversion or his sensitivity, it was his approach to connection. Like many INFPs, he was trying to connect in ways that went against his natural strengths. That's when we implemented what we'll call the 3-step connection system, and it worked wonders for him as well as other INFPs struggling with this type of problem. First, we started with inner connection through morning journaling. This wasn't just any journaling process. It was a specific framework that helped Alex get understanding of his patterns without getting lost in them. Second, we added physical movement through a personalized exercise program. This was part of his choice. And what was so good about it is it wasn't about just getting fit, though that's important. It was about creating what I call embodied confidence. So when you're stuck in your head, your body can become your greatest ally. We got to get out of what is going on in here in order to get real world feedback. And by taking more physical actions like that and something that he could measure his progress on, he started to feel more confident about himself. He was taking control of his morning and his health. Third, we developed what I call meaningful micro connections. These are small, purposeful interactions that built his confidence without overwhelming his whole system that he had made for himself. And within about 4 months, he went from contemplating giving up entirely to creating videos and landing an interview with a local documentary team that he wanted to join. But here's what's really important. He didn't have to push himself to be an extrovert or push through anxiety. Instead, he learned to use his INFP personality type in a way that de-stressed him and motivated him. But when INFPs break free from isolation, we often run straight into the second pattern, which is even more subtle and maybe more dangerous. In fact, the more successful that you become, the stronger the pattern gets. This is the purpose-security split. This is where Stephanie's story becomes important. On paper, she had everything. She had a successful corporate career, she had a good salary, stability, but inside, she felt completely unfulfilled. This wasn't just normal job satisfaction, dissatisfaction. This was a deep soul level disconnection that many INFPs experience. Not sure what I want to do. Music doesn't pay the bills. She told me this in our first session. And like many INFPs, she felt trapped between her calling and her need for security. Every time she considered following her passion, practical concerns would shut her down. Every time she focused on practical success, her soul would revolt. The traditional advice of just follow your passion fails INFPs because we're multi-passionate. We hate the 9 to 5 to an extreme, and we're looking for any excuse to not do it. And also, it creates this impossible either-or situation. It ignores the very need for stability that many INFPs feel, especially for those with families, with financial responsibilities. Maybe you're caring for your mother or something like that. You can't follow your passion and not have the financial stability to support that. And this is where most INFPs get stuck. This is what I call the purpose security pendulum, swinging between practical choices that feel soul-crushing and dream pursuits that feel irresponsible and don't pay the bills. Instead, we developed a purpose integration method that allowed Stephanie to build a bridge between both worlds. Here's how it worked. First, we identified her core resonance, the underlying pattern that made both music and her corporate work feel meaningful to her. It wasn't about the activities themselves, but it was the impact those pursuits had on her and the impact she could have through them. Second, we created what I call purpose pockets. These are small ways to express her calling within her role at work and her everyday life. This wasn't about compromising her dreams, but it was about finding creative ways to express them throughout the day. And third, we developed a parallel path strategy that allowed her to build her music career while maintaining stability. She began integrating spiritual practices into her corporate role while developing a coaching business on the side. And more importantly, she stopped seeing herself as divided and started seeing herself as whole and aligned. Having found love for myself and seen myself as someone who should be treated with love, as she put it. This wasn't just about a career choice. It was about self-integration. The final pattern is the most insidious because it actually feels productive, but it's secretly sabotaging everything. In fact, our vivid imaginations and diverse interests are the perfect recipe for spending hours, days, weeks, months, years on end doing whatever sets our hearts ablaze. As INFPs, we're dreamers. We spend a lot of time in our own heads. And all of those half-cooked, half-baked ideas feel like they need to see the light of day at some point. And it can really take our focus away. This is perfectionist paralysis. Take John's story. As an aspiring entrepreneur with ADHD, he had countless business ideas but couldn't complete any of them. Getting overwhelmed when I go into something thinking I'll get it done was his constant struggle. This is a classic INFP issue, overthinking, spending hours contemplating whether to pursue an opportunity, and also fearing making the wrong choice. This overthinking can completely halt progress and prevents us from embracing new experiences. As INFPs, we often find decision-making to be challenging because we can't help but to consider multiple different perspectives and outcomes. This leads to analysis paralysis. It leads to indecision. We get stuck in not making any choices. Like choosing between two equally unclear paths, we fear that we'll regret one of the choices. And this indecision can completely halt our personal growth and prevent us from seizing opportunities. The breakthrough came when John learned to break projects down into tiny, manageable pieces. This is something that we talk about all the time, every month within the Evolve community. Structure actually helps creativity, he discovered, which surprised him as much as it surprises most INFPs. We really fight structure, but it's necessary. It helps us so much. So using our action before perfection system, he learned to turn overwhelming projects into achievable steps. Instead of trying to perfect every detail before even starting, John began micro actions. These are small, concrete steps that bypass the perfectionistic mind that a lot of us INFPs have. While he once spent months planning a project launch, he now broke it into daily 5-minute tasks. Within weeks, he had launched more products than he had in the previous year. This isn't about forcing yourself to take massive action. It's about making action so small that perfectionism can't even stop you. And I want to give you one more. This next story embodies perhaps the most powerful transition an INFP can experience. It's that moment when everything you believed about yourself shatters and something truer emerges. Meet Adam, who has a PhD in educational psychology. He spent 48 years convinced he wasn't creative. And like many INFPs, he built his entire identity around pursuing being logical, being analytical, being a not artistic type. Which might sound strange if you are thinking that an INFP must be flowery and artistic. Despite having that in him, he wasn't allowing himself to express it. He got the message early on in life that it wasn't okay to be artistic. It wasn't okay to be creative or sensitive. He had severe stage fright and would rather give a technical presentation to hundreds than to sing in front of just 3 people. But pay attention here. After decades of denying his creative side, he reluctantly took voice lessons just to overcome his stage fright. 2 months later, something unexpected happened, and it completely shattered his carefully constructed identity. In our first session, he told me that for someone who has avoided recognition, this has been a complete mind breaker. I changed that last word. Since starting to work with me after his first vocal audition that he did on a whim during COVID times, he'd been cast in several shows, he'd been featured in theater news, and contacted by Broadway professionals, all within a year. His logical mind couldn't make sense of it. How could something so drastically different come so easily when he'd spent his whole life believing that he wasn't creative? Well, it wasn't easy. It was work. He showed up. But it was fueled by passion and possibility. And this is where most INFPs get stuck. It's what I call the identity earthquake. Everything you believe about yourself starts crumbling, and that can feel terrifying. Adam's inner saboteur kicked in hard. It was trying to protect him from this massive shift in self-image and identity. But here's what makes Adam's story so powerful is that for decades, his logical identity had been like a safety blanket. Comfortable, predictable, and above all, safe from criticism or failure. Letting go of that identity meant stepping into uncertainty, facing the terror of what if, and it was scary. But as he slowly allowed himself to dream beyond his self-imposed prison, his limits, something remarkable happened. Whatever I am is just fine. He realized this after months of inner work. This wasn't just about becoming a performer. It was about permission to be everything that he'd buried beneath years of shoulds and supposed tos. The analytical mind that he once sought after and he used as a shield became a bridge to this artistic expression. He started taking in what he knew from other fields and putting it into his music. Each performance became an act of integration, of bringing together parts of himself that he thought could not coexist. This is the journey that many INFPs face, is learning that we don't have to choose between the safe version of ourselves and the authentic one. Our sensitivity, our creativity, our analytical minds, they're all pieces of the same beautiful puzzle. And the transformation was amazing. The man who once feared singing in front of 3 people was now touring and receiving standing ovations. And more importantly, he stopped fighting his creative nature and started embracing it. I keep shedding emotional junk, he shared. I'm more outwardly expressive with my creative processes now. This is what happens when INFPs finally allow themselves to be who they truly are. It's not about choosing between being logical or creative, practical or artistic. It's about integrating all these different parts of yourself into something or someone more powerful than either part, either side itself. If you're ready to transform your limiting patterns and pursue a more authentic life, click below to join my free INFP personality type tutorial. You'll get my favorite and most impactful frameworks that have helped hundreds, if not thousands, of INFPs break free and create real change. The journey of personal growth for INFPs is a deeply introspective and meaningful process. And by understanding these patterns and implementing the right strategies, you can navigate your path with greater clarity, greater speed, and greater purpose. Stop waiting. Start taking action to make a positive change in your life now, and get the free INFP personality type tutorial below.